Picture this, a country lends you 88,000 crore rupees, not at 1% interest, not at 5% interest, at a 0.1% interest. And that too for 50 years with a 15-year grace period where you don't even have to start paying it back. Now ask yourself, when was the last time a bank offered you a personal loan like that? When was the last time anyone offered you money almost for free with no strings attached, expecting nothing back except friendship? Nobody does that. Not banks, not the governments, not in a world where every rupee, every yen, every dollar comes with an agenda. So why did Japan do exactly this for India? Because right now in New Delhi, something is happening that will quietly decide how fast your internet gets. Whether the chip inside your next smartphone was made with a Chinese component or not. Whether your job 5 years from now exists in an Indian semiconductor plant, and whether the train you take from Mumbai to Ahmedabad someday moves at 320 kilometers an hour instead of crawling for 7 hours. So why did Japan do exactly this for India? This is the question we'll be trying to answer in today's session. Japan's Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi landed in New Delhi on July 1st, 2026 for a very first visit to India as the head of the government. Now she's here for what's called the 16th India-Japan Annual Summit. And if that sounds like yet another diplomatic follow-up with garlands and handshakes, it isn't. This is the same partnership that is quietly funding India's bullet train. Of course, the result has not come yet, but still, it is in the process. The same partnership deciding who controls critical minerals that go into your phone batteries. The same partnership that just put a Japanese banking giant in control of one of India's most dramatic financial comeback stories. This affects your money, this affects your job market, and frankly, the geopolitical map you'll be living inside for the next 20 years. So let's delve into this and let's try to understand about India-Japan partnership. Now to understand why this summit matters, you have to go back and treat Japan not as a country, but as a character in India's story. A quiet, calculating, patient character who has been playing a very long game. Rewind to the year 2000. India and Japan signed what's called a global partnership, a modest, formal, and nothing dramatic partnership. Two democracies shaking hands, nothing more. Then 2006, the relationship gets upgraded. It becomes a strategic and global partnership. And this is the year something structurally important happens. The two countries agree that their prime ministers will meet every single year, alternating between Tokyo and Delhi. Now this becomes the India-Japan Annual Summit, the very mechanism Takaichi is using right now, 20 years later. See, but the real turning point was in 2014. Narendra Modi ji becomes the Prime Minister, Shinzo Abe is already Japan's Prime Minister, and these two men, both nationalists of course, both economically ambitious and both deeply wary of rising China next door, click almost instantly. That year, the partnership is upgraded again. This time to a special strategic and global partnership. That the word special isn't a decoration. In diplomatic language, that's the highest tier India offers any country. From that point on, Japan stops being just another trade partner. It becomes India's most trusted financer, its most reliable technology source, and quietly its most important counterweight against a neighbor both countries are wary of naming out loud. That is China. Now here's where the story gets even more interesting. Because most people assume India and Japan relations are about trade numbers and handshakes. Actually speaking, they're not. They're about something which is far more calculated, that is economic security. So here's a reveal number one for you. In November 2024 in Tokyo, India and Japan held their first ever economic security dialogue. And they didn't just talk vaguely about cooperation, they picked 5 specific sectors they consider so critical to national survival that they need a joint strategy. One is semiconductor, second is critical minerals, third is pharmaceuticals, fourth is clean energy, and fifth is information technology. Now think about what this list actually means. Semiconductors, the chip inside literally every device you own. Critical minerals, the lithium and the rare earths that go into your phone battery and your electric vehicle. This wasn't a trade meeting. This was two countries quietly building a supply chain that doesn't run through Beijing. And now, time for reveal number 2. And this one is financial. Just months before the summit, Japan's Sumitomo Mitsui Banking Corporation completed the acquisition of 20% stake in Yes Bank, the same Yes Bank that nearly collapsed in 2020. and had to be rescued by the Indian government and also a consortium of Indian banks. Now, this deal was valued at $1.6 billion, and it is officially the single largest cross-border investment ever made to an Indian private sector bank. A Japanese institution is now the largest shareholder in an Indian bank that 5 years ago was on the edge of a failure. That's not charity, that's Japan betting real money on India's financial future at a scale where Indians haven't even noticed. Now, there's a reveal number 3, and this is one that genuinely should surprise you. A bullet train, the Mumbai to Ahmedabad high-speed rail corridor, is being funded by Japan through a loan of roughly 88,000 crore rupees at 1% interest of just 0.1%, repayable over 50 years, and with a 15-year grace period before repayment even begins. Now, we compare that to India's own government bonds, which typically carries interest rates well above 6%. Japan is effectively lending India money at a rate that barely exists anywhere else in the world of international finance. Now, some economists have pointed out that because this loan is in yen and the rupee tends to depreciate over decades, India may end up repaying more in real rupee terms than the sticker price suggests. That's a fair and important caveat. But even accounting for that, no other country is offering India infrastructure financing on terms even remotely this generous. And here's the part that ties it all together. None of this is random goodwill. Japan is doing this because it needs India just as much as India needs Japan. Japan has an aging population, a shrinking workforce, and an economy that has been stagnant for decades. And India has the youngest workforce on the planet and a market for 1.5 billion people. Japan needs a growth story to attach itself to. India needs capital, India needs tech, India needs a partner who isn't trying to trap it into debt the way some other Asian financing deals have trapped some more smaller nations into the region. This is not friendship in the emotional sense. This is two nations solving each other's problems. See, where does India actually stand on all this and what's generally at stake for us? First, the raw economic numbers happening right now. In this financial year, bilateral trade between India and Japan had touched $27.5 billion in 2025 to 2026. Japanese investment in India between April and December of 2025 alone was $3.2 billion. Close to 1,400 Japanese companies now operate inside India, and nearly half of them are in manufacturing, meaning actual factories, actual jobs, actual production lines on Indian soil, not just paper investment. And second, there's a dimension to this relationship almost nobody outside policies talks about. India's a northeast. Now, Japan is the only country in the world that has a dedicated formal mechanism specifically for developing India's northeastern states called the India-Japan Act East Forum. Now, why does it matter? Because India's Act East policy, the push to connect India economically with Southeast Asia, and Japan's vision of a free and open Indo-Pacific physically meet in exactly one place. It's the literal bridge between South Asia and Southeast Asia. See, Japanese prefecture delegations have visited states like Manipur, and there's now a memorandum of understanding with Meghalaya specifically to skill and employ 5,000 youth. And this is Japan investing in a part of India that most global powers barely acknowledge that it exists. And third, and this is where the story turns strategic rather than economic, both the countries are founding members of Quad. Now, alongside the US and Australia, and underneath all the polite diplomatic language about a free and open Indo-Pacific, the subtext is obvious to anyone paying attention. See, this is about China. China is growing military presence in the South China Sea, its Belt and Road debt, trap financing across small Asian and African nations, its assertiveness along India's borders. And all of it has pushed India and Japan into each other's arms faster than either country might publicly admit. So now there are joint military exercises which are happening regularly. Malabar is one, Milan is there, Dharma Guardian, Veer Guardian. Proof that this isn't just about trade anymore. It's about two democracies quietly hedging against one authoritarian neighbor. And India needs the 75th anniversary of diplomatic relations with Japan in 2027. This relationship now runs through more than 70 separate dialogue mechanisms. Foreign ministers, defense ministers, national security advisors, all talking to each other constantly, year-round. Not just once a year at a summit. Now, here's one thing I want you to walk away from this video remembering. Every country that has ever financed India's rise, the British and the later various Cold War powers, did it in exchange for control. Japan is the first major power in India's modern Indian history offering capital, technology and strategic partner without determining a piece of India's sovereignty in return. Now, that's not because Japan is uniquely generous. It's because Japan, for the first time in the modern history, needs India more than India needs Japan. An aging, shrinking Japan has found in India the one thing money cannot buy, which is a young, growing market with the decades of runway left. And that, quite mathematically, is the reality as well. More than any joint statement or garland handshake is what's rewriting the terms of this friendship. See, the nation that once needed the world's help to rebuild itself after 1945 is now betting its future on a country that's still building itself. So here's the question I want you to sit with. India has now built its two most important strategic partnerships with the US and with the Japan, largely around the shared discomfort of a rising China. But partnerships built primarily out of fear of a common enemy have a historical tendency to weaken the moment that fear fades or that enemy changes its behavior. So what happens to India and Japan relations 20 years from now if China stops being the reason these two countries need each other? Is the partnership deep enough to survive on its own term? Or is China quietly the glue holding the whole thing together? Tell me know what you think in the comment section. I'll be reading every single comment. All the very best. Have a beautiful day. Thank you.